Hey everybody, this is Joe over at S17, and today is another lesson on using the S17 Rhinestone Maker Macro. What we're going to touch on today is what this advanced button does, and we're going to kind of go over the same things we did before about outlining or fills, checking overlaps, things like that. But we're going to show you what the difference is with the advanced button. So what I told you before was when you choose a stone here, it's going to use this value. SS10 is 0.127, but some people don't want to use 0.127. They want to use their own size, like maybe 0.130 or maybe smaller and tighter, like 1.126. So that's what this advanced button does. If you notice when I did a contour here, it's going to, here I'll show you, that way it's more visual. I'm going to make two of these. If I chose SS6 and made a contour, the space was calculated by saying, hey, you want an SS6, so I need to make sure there's space between these for two SS6. But if I try to put an SS10 here, they would touch each other. So watch, if I do this one and choose like SS10 or even SS16, you'll see that the spaces are further apart because it knows I'm going to put SS16 stones here. So some of these calculations are automatic. I try to make it, even the spacing. The spacing is like 0.0025 stones away from each other. I try to take all these assumptions of what people want, but it doesn't mean that's exactly what you really do want. So that's why we made this advanced button. So when I click on this, you're going to see this to inside. You'll see an option for outside, and you're going to see the rhinestone sizes disappear. So if you see that, it's gone here. You can't choose a size anymore. That's because I'm allowing you to punch in what you want to use here. If you want to use 0.130, you can. Another thing that happens is on the contours. When I had this turned off, if you notice, I only contoured into the center, and I didn't give you a choice. It always went right to the center. It doesn't tell you 3 or 4. You just always directly to the center. That's all it did. That was the only option. Trying to make it simple. Well, with the advanced, now you can say, hey, I only want 3 contours in. So if you say create contour, it goes in 3. If you want 6 contours, it'll do 6. So that gives you the flexibility. The advanced gives you the flexibility of the contours. It also gives you the option to go to the outside. If you want to go 4 contours out, you choose to the outside contour and it goes 4 out. This will become useful later on when we talk about the spread effect, but right now I'm not going to talk about that. But that's what you can do. You can go to the outside. Or here's something else that you might want to do. Let's say, I'm going to give you an example of when you might want to use this. Let's say we took a heart here, and that's going to be vinyl, but we want rhinestones outside of it. I'm going to create a contour to the outside. I just want one though, and I'll show you why. Let's create a contour to the outside, and this is him now. So this is my new guy. Now I want to be, this guy's going to be, let's just make it red. He's vinyl, and these are going to be stone. So now I want 3 to the outside. Let's make it 2. 2 to the outside. Create contours. So now I can select all of these except for the red one. I'm going to hold shift and click in the center. So now only this guy, whoops, my mistake. Select them all, hold, let's see what we got here. Oops. Hold shift and click this guy here. What I want to show you is that these guys are selected and he's not selected. Now if I apply stones, I have stone, and then of course I have to clear the path, and then I have stones with the heart. And like I said, you know how to fix this would be to break the shape before we apply the stones. So let's try that. I'm going to undo that. I'm going to highlight this again. I'm going to hold shift and click off the center heart. So that way I only have these selected here. I'm going to break the shape. Okay, I'm going to select them all again. Hold shift to deselect the heart. Or we could always move this heart out of the way. Like if we didn't want to move this to deal with holding shift, we can just move them out of the way. Select those, apply the stones. And now you'll see that here you have some majorly overlapping going on. And that's because what happens is when the segment gets too small, I'm going to go to wireframe. When the segment gets too small, you're going to have a whole bunch of these up here. And that's because the segments the segment is not big enough to have like 20 stones. So it tries to put a bunch of stones all right there. I mean, I know that might not make sense, but we'll fix that. So let's highlight this. Just looking for exact overlaps right now, just to clean it up. Check overlap. Oops. See, it tells me break the blend apart. I forgot to do that. So highlight this, clear the blend, highlight it again, check for overlapping. It says, hey, I found a bunch. I'm going to say yes, delete those all. Well, here we have this little problem here. So I can take this, and if I just uncheck this, say check for overlapping, it's going to say, hey, I found a bunch of these. Do you want to delete them? I do. So I got rid of all those. Now it's nice and clean. So now I can send this to the vinyl cutter and cut my vinyl, and then I can send the rest of it to my plotter and cut that for the rhinestone template. So anyways, that's what the outside will do for you, you know, contouring to the outside. So let's get rid of that. Let's delete all that stuff. Now, what is this here? The contour spacing. Well, remember before when I told you it would automatically detect if I put SS16, it would put enough contour space for an SS16 stone. This just allows you to choose the space that you want. So let's say here's a square, and I say my contour space is 0.13. And I'm going to show you, make a couple of these so we can see the difference. We'll just change the numbers just to see. It's kind of like what I did before, but you get to pick the number. So I'm going to click here, and I'm going to say contour to the inside. I'll just say 5. Then I'm going to click on this one and say make that 0.25 contour. I'm going to click this one and say I want let's say 0.5. And this one, let's say 0.1, just to show you what it's doing. This value is saying what's the distance between the first one for each contour, what's the size. And by changing this number, you have full control of how far you want your contours to be. So that's all that this is right here. So that's that. Stone spacing, so let me get rid of all these guys. Change him back to 0.025. Stone spacing is exactly what it means. What's the space we want between each stone? So right now it's set to 0.025, and let's just apply stones. And you can see that they are right there. The distance between this little space in between there is 0.025. So let's make a couple. I'll make a couple small boxes so you can see the difference. Apply stones. Now watch on this guy. I'll say make it 0.1. Whoops. Here 0.1, and then I'll apply stones to this one, and you'll see that the space here is a lot bigger. So that's what that option there is to put your stones tighter or further apart. Okay. Now let's see. Let me delete this guy and this guy. So now, what is overlap space? Well, let's say I make my stone space 0.025. That's a space in between it. And just to make it nice and tight and looks clean, I'm going to break the shape, apply stones, clear my blend. Okay. So right now this spacing here is 0.025, and my overlap space is 0.02, which means that I'm going to try to visually show you. I'm going to make this little circle 0.02. Then I'll show you. You're probably wondering, what is this little circle for? Okay, so this circle is 0.02, which is the same as our overlap space. So if this fits in between there, which it does, it will not detect an overlap. But if we change this value to something larger than this space, it will. So right now, since the spacing is 0.25 and our overlap check is 0.2, check space, or check overlap, says, oh, I found the detected the overlaps here, which is okay. We want to delete those. but it didn't detect any that are too close. So watch, like I said, check overlap again. There's nothing there. Now, if we said, hey, make this 0.3, which is now bigger, if I made this guy 0.3, just to show you, you'll see that this doesn't fit in there. He's going to start having issues and saying, hey, I detected these guys are too close. So watch, now check the overlap. He says, hey, I found all these guys are too close. So if I delete them, you won't have anything there. So we don't want to delete it. We'll just say no. And I'll undo that. So that's what this does. This is what checks the space between stones. So if like, for example, if you're having a problem with your material ripping, you know, some people make their stones nice and tight, but then when they go to cut their template material, it starts ripping. That means your stones might be too close together. So the whole point about this check overlap is to check to see if your spacing is good. So you can, you know, like I said, you can actually, when you use advanced, you can change the spacing to be whatever spacing you want to check to see if it's in with that tolerance. So anyways, that's the advanced feature. I just kind of want to show you, I'm sorry, there's also millimeters here. I didn't really go over that. Millimeters for people who are working in millimeters. People over internationally, like in other countries, use millimeters. They can click this button and all the values will become millimeters. At least for the stone sizes and the spacing and stuff. The number of contours is 5 is 5. That's not a thing. It's just the measurements. So that's an option they can use if they want to use millimeters. You have to, of course, you have to change this to millimeters as well, and so everything matches. So anyways, those are the advanced features. We'll get into some of these other advanced features in another tutorial.